Vietnam, what has happened in peace couldn't be achieved in war. The French and the Americans were there for 20-some years, killed millions of the Vietnamese, and we ended up losing 60,000 men. And then we come home, then all of a sudden, you know, we're trading with them, we're talking to them, we travel, we invest in Vietnam. So it's exactly what the founders said we're supposed to do. So we should never resort to this use of force. This is a serious, serious flaw in our thinking, and there's no reason why we can't reject it. Very simply, not only should we look to the Constitution, but we can look to some of the moral principles. And one of the moral principles is in political action. There should be goals in political action. Some people that are very agreeable with our views aren't politically active. And I really understand why. But we still have enough freedom to congregate here and meet and champion a cause. So this is very, very good. But we should know exactly what our political actions are designed for. And that is, for one thing, the promotion of individual liberty. I think it's very important to know that liberty is individual. Liberty is not a collective idea. We don't get our liberties because we belong to a group. We should never exclude liberty to the individuals who belong to a group, but groups cannot demand special favors because they belong to a group. Every individual deserves the right to life and liberty, and the purpose of government should be to protect that life and liberty, not to meddle with it.
Yes.
Freedom movement should say that we are going to protect life, we're going to protect liberty. Government doesn't give us our liberty, it comes from our Creator, it comes to us in a natural way. And so therefore government should be very limited to that job. But if we have if we have life and liberty, and it's your life, should it not be true that fruits of your labor belong to you? Which means that we have to give up on two basic principles that we have been following for way too long. As a matter of fact, they both came into vogue about the same time. I talked about the Federal Reserve. But if we want to restore the notion that it's your life to be productive with, and actually it's your life to destroy, and it's your responsibility to take care of yourself, not somebody else. It's your responsibility. Nobody's going to take care of you. But in order to do that, to make sure that you deserve the fruits of your labor, we have to reject the notion of the personal income tax. And that means that we not only get rid of the IRS, but we get rid of the 16th Amendment as well, to make sure that it doesn't happen. A lot of people ask me, okay, everybody knows I want to get rid of the income tax, but the question that everybody in the media comes out and says, and what are you going to use for the, what kind of tax are you going to have? And I say, nothing. We don't need it.
Exactly.
We don't need another tax. If you have a government that's doing the proper thing, you don't have governments that are running empires and running a welfare state, and you don't need a new tax to replace the income tax. But the whole idea that they own us, even if they allowed us to keep 1%, where it started out very, very low, it's that principle that we have to reject. And of course, the real rejection should come in the method that they collect income taxes, because it is a violation of our rights. But there's another area that assumes that government owns our life, and it's a special category of people, and yet that category is growing by leaps and bounds. We do not have a draft today, but we have a selective service. That means the 18-year-old signs up, and it is assumed that women wouldn't be, but quite frankly, in this age, if the draft is resumed, I imagine that young women are going to be drafted, young men, but they might need so many, they might go up to 20, 30, or 40 years of age in order to draft. So this idea that the government owns a segment of the people and can mandate that they go overseas and fight is something that we as freedom-loving people have to reject in its entirety. And the other issue that we have to deal with on principle is the ownership of property.
Yes.
And in a free society, and under our Constitution, the property should be owned by the people.
Yeah.
The question often asked conservatives and constitutionalists and libertarians, well, how are you going to take care of the environment? The government's going to take care of the environment. And I suggest to them, well, what happens when you have an extremely large amount of government, such in a socialist fascist system? Do they take good care of the environment?
No.
They destroy the environment. Where is the property values best kept up? It's by people who own property and have an interest in it. But still again, we do have to address the subject of environmental concerns. But the principle is that if you own property and you take care of it, that's one thing, but you have no right to destroy your neighbor's property.
Right.
You don't have the right to dump your garbage in your neighbor's property or in their air or in their water. So property rights really is the vehicle that you can protect the environment without expanding the state and having the bureaucrats from the EPA coming with guns and telling you what you can do with your land, and they do it with prior restraint. So it's the principle of private property. Not only does it protect the property, it really should and can protect the environment as well or better than any other system. The other principle that we have to deal with in protecting the economy is that of voluntary contracts. And that is, in social issues, most people understand that we do not need the government in our bedrooms. We do not need the government investigating any social relationships, whether they're sexual, religious, or political. We should be able to get together as long as there's no violence and the use of force. And we have a lot of people that agree with that, but a lot who agree with that principle don't agree with the principle that those same rules ought to apply to the economy. That you should have all voluntary arrangements on economic events and the government shouldn't regulate them. If you don't like a product, you don't buy it. But the government should never interfere with hiring practices, wage practices, and all these things. The market should operate. One thing that I am absolutely convinced of, if we had those rules in place, those basic fundamental rules, we would be a lot more competitive and our jobs wouldn't be going overseas. In a free society, we have a condition that allows individuals to make the decision. It's called the release of creative energy. And it is under those conditions that people then are obligated. There's a lot of obligation in freedom, and sometimes that's why it's rejected. Sometimes it's misunderstood. But in a free society, the obligations falls on oneself. And that is, it allows us the opportunity to work for excellence and work for virtue. And that's what society is all about, but it has to be done in a private way. Today, we have a government that says, well, we're going to make the economy fair, we're going to make you better, and we're going to make the world safe for democracy through force. And it just doesn't work. They only can pursue those efforts with the sacrifice of liberty.
Right.
And yet it's liberty that provides us the opportunity to do what they pretend they want to do. So it isn't that difficult. It just means that we need to get our confidence back again. And this is what's happening this past 6 months or so in this campaign. I had been a real skeptic about the campaign, believing that your numbers were small, there weren't very many, there was a nucleus of people who knew and understood and wanted freedom. But guess what? There's a lot of people out there.